This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Our two-day rally in developing world markets ran out of steam today as we saw concerns over the coronavirus outbreak persist on markets. Adding to the uncertainty is, of course, that key OPEC Plus meeting, which we expect tomorrow. Now, as a result, MSCI's index of emerging market stocks slipped about 0.6% on the day. That's after rising some 5.6% over the past two sessions. On the continent, South Africa's JSE saw its first day of losses this week. It is tracking global equities as, of course, optimism about the slowing down of COVID-19 begins to fade. In Egypt, the EGX 30 was up almost 3% on the day. We saw the country's largest listed real estate developer, Talat Mustafa Group, has now got approval to issue the country's first sukuk, or Islamic bond, which is worth about $127 million. Now, also coming up on today's show, Nigeria shuts down its dilapidated oil refineries as it plans to upgrade the sites. Transport links reopen in what was once China's epicenter of COVID-19. And informal traders fear being left behind as Nigeria distributes economic relief funds. Well, let's kick off today's show in Nigeria, where the country has decided to shut down all its oil refineries as it works to secure funding and a model to upgrade them. Now, the three refinery sites in Africa's largest oil exporter have worked only sporadically due to years of underinvestment. This comes as the continent's largest oil exporter scrambles to cut nearly $5 billion from its budget during an oil price crash brought on by the coronavirus pandemic. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation now says the oil industry will look to cut costs as well as extend payments wherever possible in order to survive oil prices that have now hit 18-year lows late last month. Well, Deji Badmus joins us in Lagos with the latest on that news about Nigeria's refineries. Great to have you on the show, Deji. Now, we know that Nigeria's oil refineries, they have had a poor operating record for over a decade now. In fact, 70 to 80% of the national petroleum products demand in the country is met through imports. So, Deji, what, if any, impact will this decision have on Nigeria's oil sector?
Well, it's difficult to tell what impact it will have because in terms of what impact it will have when it comes to petrol distribution, so to speak, in Nigeria, obviously no impact at all because for a very long time, as you've said, Uche, these refineries have actually not worked at optimum capacity. As a matter of fact, in most cases, they never operated up to even 30% capacity. So the bulk of what Nigeria consumes in terms of petrol is imported. And you know, of course, the government subsidizes that. And for a very long time now, quite a number of people have been asking the government to just completely sell the refineries, even though the labor unions here are against that. But, you know, the preponderance of opinion, especially from the private sector, is that those refineries should be sold and that money should not be wasted on them at all. You know, Dangote refinery will be coming upstream very, very shortly, and it just might render those refineries useless. So what impact it will have in terms of petrol distribution in the country? Absolutely nothing. If the government planned to sell the refinery, then maybe we would say, well, if you have investors, people who might be willing to buy them off, then we could begin to talk about any potential impact. So to be candid, I can't see any impact it would have. Right. A lot of people want the refineries to be sold. Everyone is just waiting for Dangote refinery to come on stream. And that is what a lot of people believe will be the game changer for the country when it comes to domestic refining of crude.
Well, Deji, in the meantime, all eyes are on tomorrow's meeting between OPEC and, of course, other producers. Now, despite the sharp fall that we have seen in oil demand and, of course, the debate around cutting production, Nigeria has chosen to ramp up its crude oil production. So what is going to be Nigeria's position in tomorrow's meeting?
Well, Nigeria's position has been made clear before now. What Nigeria wants to see is a settlement of the disagreement now, especially between Russia and Saudi Arabia, so that, prices could go up. Anything at all that would show up prices, that's what Nigeria wants to see. Because at the moment, if oil continues to sell for below $30 per barrel, Nigeria would continue to run at a loss. And besides, at the moment, Nigeria is even finding it difficult to get buyers for its oil because its oil is a bit expensive. And then the cost of production of Nigerian oil is also quite expensive. So not making enough profit and then not getting buyers to, buy off your oil, that is a double whammy. So anything that pushes up the prices, Nigeria would want to see that. Well, we don't know what will happen when it comes to courts, if Nigeria will be affected. The good thing is that Nigeria has actually ramped up production. We understand we're doing about 2.03 million barrels per day. If things stay that way and there's calm in the Niger Delta and there's no cut from OPEC, or even if there's any cut at all, nothing significant, but if prices go up, then Nigeria would be happy. And that's exactly what Nigeria wants to see. And everyone is hopeful that after that meeting on Thursday, that something positive would come out of that and we would see some kind of rebound and then prices will begin to go up. If not, then Nigeria would sink into deeper troubles.
Well, many thanks for your insight there, Deji. Deji Badmus joining us there in Lagos. Well, let's stay in the country. Now, Nigeria is heading to the international debt market to borrow about $6.9 billion in an attempt to cushion its economy from the impact from the coronavirus. Now, authorities are saying Africa's biggest economy is seeking fresh loans to enhance care capacity as well as respond adequately to the emergency caused by the virus. But with a brittle economy engineered by a crash in the oil market, many are worried about what this move may spell for the economy. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports.
The impact of the coronavirus continues to bite hard on Nigeria's economy and its people. Government and private businesses grind to a halt following the imposition of the lockdown by authorities. Now Nigeria is looking to borrow $6.9 billion from international lenders like the IMF, the World Bank and the African Development Bank. Among other things, the fund is meant to reduce the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the economy.
The emerging health and economic risks resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic and the decline in international crude oil prices pose significant threats to the Nigerian economy, to the Nigerian healthcare system, and even to national security. It also poses significant risks to the lives and well-being of our citizens.
The borrowing plans come amid a crash in global oil prices and a huge external debt profile of about $27.1 billion. Nigeria spent $1.3 billion to service external debt in 2019. That's 250% more than what it spent in the last 5 years. Government had initially stalled on borrowing plans, but it's now reverting to it to help spend its way out of an imminent recession. Economists here say it could further burden the already fragile economy.
The debt profile of the country as we speak is huge. Is far more than $25 billion, approximately 27 billion US dollars. So if we add more to it, at our current imbalance to debt service to revenue, as also rate of debt to economic development, using growth as one of the parameters in measuring that, it is clear that even though coronavirus may not take down the economy to its knees, but debt pressure on the economy will be so huge.
Placing the earning and spending power in the hands of citizens seems to be a viable option.
what government needs to do to save Nigeria, and in fact, African leaders should do to protect Africa, is to deliberately, and I use my word carefully, to engineer economic agent, deliberately to reactivate production. And what we call reactivation of production will be that ability to spend. So people must have ability to spend. I don't know how government is going to do it. It's either put money in their pocket, if you like, using technology, or you enable them to work, enable them to spend, and put together back the economy that seems to be flying away from their hands.
The requested loan is expected to fund a $1.29 billion intervention to meet the COVID-19 emergencies across the nation. And government says the loan will not be tied to any conditionality. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, let's now take a look at our corporate headlines today. South Africa's property owners are expected to provide relief to retail tenants who are hit by the 21-day nationwide lockdown amid the coronavirus pandemic. Now, the initiative will be rolled out by landlords to focus on small, medium and micro-sized enterprises, with an aim of preserving jobs for retailers, their suppliers, as well as service providers. And South Africa's national lockdown has also forced oil firm Sasol to cut its guidance for fuel sales by double digits. The firm now expects to produce approximately 7.4 million tons of synthetic fuel against the previously guided 7.8 million tons. And Tesla has announced it will grant leave of absence to all non-essential workers and implement salary cuts as part of a continued shutdown of the company's production. The suspension is expected to interrupt plans to ramp up production of Tesla's Model Y sport utility vehicle. The firm plans to resume normal operations on May the 4th. And finally, founder of Twitter and payment app Square, Jack Dorsey, will donate $1 billion towards efforts to tackle the coronavirus pandemic. The donation will be funded through the owned shares in Square and will be distributed through the Start Small Foundation. And that is a look at our corporate headlines. Well, we are heading into a short break now, still to come on the show. We take a look at the world of cryptocurrencies and how it's coping with COVID-19. An Ethiopian airline slashes a huge chunk of its passenger operations amid the coronavirus pandemic.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra Naidoo.
Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest minds in the world.
There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet.
It is the sheer diversity by the people who call Southern Africa home, and their relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues for taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, as global stock markets and economies have been ravaged by the impact of the coronavirus outbreak, crypto markets, which many thought could be immune to the fallout, have actually fallen sharply too. We've seen Bitcoin crashing to as low as $5,000 at one point. Now, crypto traders are saying it is currently trading around the low end of $6,000. Like other markets, travel restrictions and, of course, the impact that it could have had on trade has, of course, stifled sentiment in the market. However, some believe that cryptocurrencies will find buyers coming back in as investors seek out assets which are uncorrelated to the main markets. Well, I spoke to Owen Odia. She's Nigeria's country manager for global cryptocurrency company Luno about the outlook for cryptos.
Bitcoin's recent price drop has been significant, but of course needs to be compared alongside with other markets. Bitcoin has seemed to done fairly well compared to the other markets. But it's not unexpected because Bitcoin seems to behave like gold and other assets have sort of lost value but stabilized over time. Gold, for instance, experienced a huge drop in February, only to stabilize and increase in value. So we expect BTC over the next week, month to move back to its uncorrelated position, which will offer a bullish performance. So I'm hopeful.
Well, Owen, we know the cryptocurrency market, it's no stranger to volatility. Some are questioning, though, whether cryptocurrencies are too young to withstand an event such as the coronavirus pandemic and, of course, the resulting global recession, which we're seeing now. What are your thoughts on that?
So crypto assets such as Bitcoin was created after the global recession in 2008. And has always been seen as uncorrelated to the main markets. While the market cap is nowhere like the likes of gold and fiat, which is like the Naira dollar, its growth since inception has been pretty amazing. And the fact that it's the best performing asset in the last decade shows that regardless of its age, it's developing a muscle combined resilience to weather the current economic storm. Bitcoin remains unscattered. It's had like 10 years lifespan. It has crashed, recovered in countless cycles, and been declared dead over 380 times. However, it's managed to prevail repeatedly. So yes, I don't think it's too young. I'm hopeful again.
Well, given the global environment at present, where do you see crypto going as an asset class? Are those, especially who call it possibly a safe haven asset going forward, too optimistic?
So cryptocurrency is like nothing we have seen in the past and fulfills the requirements for several asset classes, from cryptocurrency to commodity, security. It depends on who's classifying it. So those people calling it safe haven, they've taken a broad look, looked at its qualities and performance since inception. Cryptocurrency has seemed to be doing so well. So I would not say they're confused. The term we'll call it visionary or early adopter has come to mind. Its behavior in the short or says it shows that it can actually live up to expectations, so they are not confused. Although it's far too early to say, if we look at gold during the financial crisis, we saw it fall by 25% and then totally recover all its losses in a very short time. In the next 4 to 6 months, we'll probably have a clearer picture. But of course, they are not confused. Depends on how it's viewed. And of course, they've monitored the performance since inception. So yes, it's not. Some people it's okay to call it a safe haven.
Now, we have seen almost every sector across the globe hit by this coronavirus pandemic. I'm curious to know, Owen, how are blockchain and firms and startups and cryptocurrency firms such as Luno faring right now?
Not like I'll be able to speak for others. However, it's been pretty impressive. We've seen a lot of sleepers. In other words, customers that have not used it over a while, all of a sudden becoming very active. Volumes have increased. Of course, the price of BTC has done fairly well. I mean, it's been able to weather the storm, like I mentioned previously. Just last week, it was trading at over 6,000 now. It's over 7,000. So yeah, so it's caught a lot of people's attention. And also seeing that most people are working from home right now. I'm home, so I guess they're stuck at home looking for ways to get busy. However, the market has been very, very impressive. Volume have increased, and we've seen a lot of active users in the recent past.
Of course, that was Owen Odia, Nigeria's country manager for global cryptocurrency firm Luno. Well, let's shift focus now. Head to Ethiopia now. The country's national carrier, Ethiopian Airlines, says it has no plans to lay off its employees during the COVID-19 period. Its business, however, has taken a hit, forcing the carrier to slash almost 90% of its passenger operations. Here's CGTN's Coletta Wanjohi reporting from Addis Ababa.
With different countries administering partial and total lockdowns, Ethiopian Airlines has been forced to suspend flights to 91 of its 110 international destinations. Ethiopian Airlines says in a day it would do at least 350 flights, but now it can only do 50. Of these, only 10 are international flights. This has translated into losses.
And as we speak, Ethiopian Airlines has lost a revenue of $550 million US dollars, including April, because we know our loss in April, we are not flying. So April included, between January and April.
The airline says it has permanent, contract, freelancers and seasonal workers. Each category has different terms of service during this low business time.
Ethiopian Airlines has not laid off any employee. And Ethiopian Airlines has no plans to lay off any employee.
The chief executive officer says the services of some contract workers, most of whom are usually retired staff who come back on call, will be put on hold for now. And talks are on with others to take a break, but with pay.
There is some confusion with about 596 contract employees who are currently on vacation, but they may exhaust their 2019 last year vacation. In that case, when they exhaust their 2019 vacation, either we'll give them their 2020 advance vacation in advance, or they may choose to take a month or two unpaid leave. That we will decide when they exhaust their 2019 vacation.
The airline says it is planning to remain in the skies throughout the COVID-19 period. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Now, in South Africa, business confidence has dropped to its lowest in 7 months to 89.9 in March. That's from 92.7 in February. Now, the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry says the drop is as a result of the global COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has also impacted vehicle sales and weakened the currency, the rand. Now, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa imposed a nationwide lockdown at the end of March in order to curb the spread of the coronavirus. The lockdown crashed domestic demand at a time when the economy had already slipped into a recession. Moody's Investor Service cut the country's debt to junk on March 27th, and Fitch Ratings lowered its assessment deeper into sub-investment grade a week later. And in Uganda, the coronavirus lockdown continues to hit businesses quite hard, with many having to close down. But of course, market vendors are allowed to keep working despite low returns. The government has banned public transport, as well as implementing a stay-at-home order to reduce infection rates of COVID-19, which is heavily affecting vendors. CGTN's Isabel Nakiria reports.
Millie Chandiru is so wrapped up in her work that she hardly goes back home. She's a vendor at the Nakawa market in Kampala, but the ban on public transport is making it hard for her to walk to work every day.
I sleep right here at my stall, but I send food to the children. Sometimes I rush and go and see them, but you know it is possible to infect them with the virus in case I get it. So I always disinfect myself as soon as I reach home, then take a shower before I interact with them.
Calls by the government to have people stay home have affected businesses like Millie's. A government decision to keep markets open was a blessing to Millie, but business is low. She says she can hardly break even.
People no longer come to shop because there is no transport. I used to sell a sack of Irish potatoes in 3 days, but now it can stay for over a week, and yet potatoes don't last long. They go bad fast.
Markets are usually crowded, making it easier for the virus to spread. The Ugandan government has asked the vendors to keep a safe distance from each other, which isn't easy. Vendors in this market are being hit hard by the coronavirus lockdown, but they say they live on a daily income and need to work hard to put food on the table. And despite a low turnout of buyers, these traders say they will keep their businesses open.
Even under these hard conditions, we will stay working because we can't stay home. We have families to take care of, and we don't have savings. We are very ordinary people. Whatever we earn each day is what we feed ourselves with. So if you tell such a person not to work, that means he will stay hungry.
It's still unclear whether the government will extend the lockdown, but for vendors like Millie, filling up their pockets once again is what they are hoping for. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
Now, a broad coalition of Kenyan companies have launched the Safe Hands Kenya initiative, which is aimed at providing tools for rapid mass sanitation. They spent the day educating people in Nairobi slums about the coronavirus and distributing sanitizers. This, of course, has paved the way for a nationwide marketing campaign to be rolled out in an attempt to inform people on the spread of the virus. Combating the pandemic has proved difficult to implement in developing nations due to the close proximity of homes. Now, this partnership includes technology-based distribution companies, as well as input suppliers, manufacturers, media houses, and community organizations. To ensure the success of the plan, members have pledged to uphold three key principles, including zero margin, critical speed, and last mile saturation.
We are engaged in this community in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in the informal settlements. And we do this through our vibrant and robust community leadership structure. So we are able to reach out to our people with communication and information and education in terms of COVID-19 pandemic. And in each and every area where we operate, we have community leaders. For example, Kibera, there are 16 villages. We have 32 community leaders in each and every village. So, like today, we are engaged in distribution of sanitizers. And we use our community leaders to go into households. So, for example, at the end of the day today, we are going to reach out to 6,400 community households.
Now, Zimbabwe is among 18 nations that will be left worse off after the coronavirus pandemic. That is according to the United Nations World Food Programme. Now, the WFP says the drought-stricken nation now needs donor aid more than ever before. CGTN's Farai Mwakutia tells us more.
62-year-old Faisa Savanu lives off paltry earnings from collecting used plastic bottles and growing whatever she can in her garden. She's unwell and has back problems which affects her ability to do both effectively. Because she's below 65 years of age, she does not qualify to receive food aid from the government. She literally has to scrape by to feed herself and 2 grandchildren.
We can't afford to eat in the morning, afternoon and evening. Most of the time, my grandchildren will eat before they go to school, and that's all until supper. They don't carry anything to school for lunch either.
Across the road lives Jenny Pararadza. She's among millions of beneficiaries of a social welfare food aid scheme, under which she used to receive 50 kilograms of maize each month, which has now been replaced by a cash payout.
The $180 I received can't meet my food requirements. The price of maize meal and all other commodities have gone up. Last month, I managed to buy just 1 bottle of cooking oil and a bar of soap.
That's left her and 5 grandchildren in an extremely difficult position.
During the last season, we harvested 1.5 buckets of maize, which won't go very far. We are already not eating properly, so this will just make life tougher.
The elderly neighbors live in Hopley, an informal settlement on the outskirts of Harare. Many of the residents here live in poverty. Already in dire straits, the economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic will leave this community in an even more vulnerable state. The government has launched a $2.2 billion appeal to help it respond to COVID-19, a target that may be hard to reach given that as at February, the World Food Programme had still not raised the funds needed to feed 4.1 million food-insecure Zimbabweans. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
You are watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break now, but still to come. Transport links reopen in what was once China's epicenter of COVID-19. And Singapore introduces tougher measures to prevent a resurgence of the coronavirus.
Holding guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Perina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
I'm Uche Okoronkwo reporting from Nairobi's city center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what do you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are these stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Just about half past the hour, let's recap today's top headlines. Now, globally, there are now more than 1.4 million confirmed cases. More than 83,000 people have died. Cases in the U.S. have surged to almost 400,000, over a quarter of the global total. American hospitals reported nearly 2,000 deaths on Tuesday. In the Middle East, Iran has registered 64,000 infections, while the Chinese mainland reported 62 new infections. And the top leaders of the Communist Party of China have met to discuss epidemic control and work resumption. General Secretary Xi Jinping said China needs to be well prepared to deal with long-term challenges to its health system and its economy. He also added that Hubei province needs to focus on better treatment of severe cases, and authorities must stop local transmission of the virus from people returning from abroad. Now, Ethiopia has declared a state of emergency in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has called on Ethiopians to stand with the government in overcoming the crisis. Africa's second most populous nation has recorded over 50 cases of COVID-19 and 2 deaths so far. That is a recap of today's top headlines. Now, after 76 days in lockdown, Wuhan has begun a new chapter. Once China's epicenter of COVID-19, the city has reopened transport links, marking a significant turning point in its recovery. Our reporters filed these reports from some of Wuhan's main travel entry points.
Hankou railway station behind me, you can see the departure floor of this railway station. These group of people are part of 55,000 passenger trips that will be made outbound channel from Wuhan only on Wednesday. Now, this is not a big figure compared with the day when the city was putting under lockdown in January 23rd, but certainly it's already a sign of a resumption of operation here. A lot of people arrive early because they have to go through a very severe process to get into the railway station. They have to show their green card, healthy card. They have to show their temperatures. So it takes a while to hop on the train. That's why you see a relatively more people waiting at the railway station. But the railway staff are trying to make the entire process smooth and safe.
But like the airport is unlocked, but it doesn't mean it's unprotected. So both the airport and the airlines are taking a lot of preventive measures against this COVID-19 pandemic. An hour ago, I boarded a plane which is heading to Shanghai, and there were over 100 passengers on that plane heading to Shanghai. They are already on their way right now. So the flight attendant not only checking their temperatures, they also check their QR code, green QR code. Also, they have this special arrangement of the seats. For example, passengers cannot sit right next to each other. The seats in the middle are not sold in order to keep the distance between passengers. And also the last 3 back rows of the plane are designed as isolation wards. If there was a suspected case on the plane, the flight attendant will immediately isolate that person in the last 3 back rows and use a separate toilet to prevent any contact with other passengers.
The checkpoint has actually been quite busy. At one particular moment, there was even a little congestion going on here with vehicles trying to pass through these checkpoints. And last night at midnight, when police officers finally lifted these roadblocks, that was quite a scene. The queue stretched about 5 kilometers with eager passengers just waiting in line in order to leave Wuhan to either, go back to their families, to their loved ones, or to go back to where they work at. And for us, it's quite a change as well, because we've been here for 2.5 months, and when we just got here, there was literally no vehicles, no people on the streets. And just to be able to see this, I think this moment really carries symbolic meaning for at least these passengers who are trying to leave the city, because it at least signals that their lives are back on track, are returning back to some form of normalcy.
Meanwhile, the work resumption rate of large industrial enterprises in Wuhan has now exceeded 97%, Well, CGTN's Shu Ching-chen gives us an update from Wuhan.
I am right now at Wuhan's Han Street, one of the busiest commercial centers here in the city. So the last time I visited here was in February, probably the darkest time during the lockdown. I literally saw nobody on the street, but businesses started to reopen to the public on the last day of March, and it's been a week, and we do see an increasing number of people here. So brands like Nike, Adidas, and other fast fashion retailers, they have opened their storefront to customers. But customers do need to take their body temperature and to wear a mask before entering these shops. And restaurants along these streets, as well as across the city, still do not offer any dining services. And for higher-end sitting restaurants on the street, they're not open at all. For fast food shops, brands like Starbucks and Godiva, they do offer takeouts and delivery service.
And Chinese online education platforms are taking investors by storm, defying the coronavirus investment blues. One has just raised $1 billion. Well, CGTN's Zhang Xishuan finds out what investors are looking for in China's online education market.
Online teaching platform Yuanfudao's capital raising is the largest in China's e-learning sector so far, and boosts the Beijing-based company's valuation to $7.8 billion. Founded in 2012, the company offers e-courses to students of all ages, as well as online question and answer services and homework grading. It now has over 400 million users.
The main reasons behind its private equities are very, very confident about online large class formats. They think this is the financially sustainable model for the near future.
At least 8 e-teaching firms raised 100 million yuan each last month, including Dingdong Class, a platform that provides English language lessons for children.
Online education has been one of the few sectors to benefit from the restrictions brought about by COVID-19 pandemic, with schools and universities forced to close and move teaching online.
Market competition for services for kindergarten through 12th grade is white hot now. Many platforms providing education for entrance tests and studying abroad are also working hard to attract users, though their payment conversion rates are low and their costs remain high. We're paying more attention to those providing online skill training, an emerging market that has not been developed much. We think platforms giving lessons for industrial skills will have great opportunities.
More than 100 online education platforms are now active in China, and their number of active users has surged during the coronavirus outbreak.
For free trial students, yes, it grew at 10 times, 20 times, 30 times for a lot of players. But do you have the capability to retain them into spring semester and also summer break? It's a question mark, because by then you'll be starting charging fees. But if you look at fee-paying students for the last 3 months, I would say the competition landscape doesn't change a lot. So looking forward for the next 3 to 6 months, I will still be cautious. I would think the top 4 or 5 players still have at least 60% of the market share on the online space.
Wang says that to keep up with the market growth or even stand out from the massive group of competitors, operators need to focus more on their technology, improving class content, and carefully managing their business strategy. Zhang Shixuan, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
Well, let's head to Singapore now. The country had earlier won international praise for its strong coronavirus detection work. But infections have once again spiked in the past month. Now, the government has now enacted tougher measures to prevent a resurgence of the virus. CGTN's Nima Praten reports from Singapore.
A circuit breaker. That is the term being applied to a partial lockdown in Singapore from the 7th of April to the 4th of May, aimed at breaking the chain of COVID-19 community transmission in the city-state.
We have decided that instead of tightening incrementally over the next few weeks, we should make a decisive move now to preempt escalating infections. We will therefore impose significantly stricter measures. This is like a circuit breaker. It will help to reduce the risk of a big outbreak occurring. And it should also help to gradually bring our numbers down.
Although the first case of COVID-19 landed on the country's shores at the end of January, infections initially remained low, thanks to a strong tracing, detection, and isolation framework. However, over the past month, there's been a marked increase in new cases as numbers breached the 1,000 mark.
During this month-long circuit breaker, workplaces are closed, apart from essential services, and schools have moved to home-based learning. Singapore citizens and residents are being advised to only socialise with those within their household and to only go outdoors to do essential things. Now, public transport remains running and food and beverage venues are open. However, customers must either take away or get a delivery if they're craving their favourite meal.
The spike in case numbers over the past month has been attributed to a second wave of imported infections, mainly brought back by Singapore citizens and residents returning home from new epicentres of the outbreak. Measures to reduce escalating case numbers were put in place, such as travel restrictions and the closure of entertainment venues. But as case numbers increased, contact tracing became harder. The Singapore government has kept open lines of communication during the global pandemic, which has helped to bolster a belief in its transparency and allowed for a sense of calm. Meltwater, a media intelligence company, has been following the interactions of social media users in Singapore since the start of the outbreak.
Majority of the discussions we've seen are still neutral to positive. I think when we start to look at emotions, the most commonly used emoticon seems to be fear and love. So I think the storytelling of positive stories, people are still keeping a good mind overall.
A third unprecedented budget was announced to help cushion the economic blow to workers, businesses and households as a result of the partial lockdown. This added an additional $3.5 billion to the already announced $40 billion to support the economy. The island nation is digging deep to keep the country afloat. Nima Pratin, CGTN, Singapore.
Now, as the COVID-19 pandemic spreads, the issue of accessible medical equipment is paramount. In Brazil, owners of 3D printers are now trying to help reduce the shortages. Our correspondent Paulo Cabral has more on that report.
This is 3D printing in the age of the COVID-19 pandemic. These volunteers are producing face shields as a way to tackle the worldwide shortage of medical safety equipment against the coronavirus. The idea is the brainchild of this biomedical engineer who recently posted online calling on her peers and owners of 3D printers to help after seeing a similar initiative in Italy.
We are working on 3 different fronts. One front is to develop a platform to manage the project and distribute the products. Another is the production of the face shields themselves. And a third one is a project to use 3D printing to produce ventilators. We are just waiting for our design to be approved by health authorities to begin production.
A French multinational home improvement retailer offered its facilities, usually rented out to customers to practice do-it-yourself projects, now to volunteers to print and assemble equipment.
The health industry, by themselves, it's difficult to do all the things. So important, all the companies in different sectors join together to deal with this crisis.
The masks being made here are primarily destined to healthcare professionals. In many hospitals around Brazil, there is already a shortage of materials like this, essential for them to work safely.
In this 3D print workshop in São Paulo, more volunteers are working on face shields. One challenge now is collaboration.
We have managed to work in a decentralized and autonomous manner to fulfill society's needs. What we need now is to have more people who have 3D printers to contact us to get the file and begin printing as soon as possible.
The COVID-19 pandemic has brought huge challenges to the world, and many people are up to it any way they can. Paulo Cabral, CGTN, São Paulo.
Well, on that note, let's shift focus now. Take a look at how commodities performed today. Oil prices have steadied near $32 a barrel. They're supported by hopes that a meeting between OPEC members and, of course, allied producers on Thursday will trigger output cuts and, of course, help shore up prices. Now, there is some hope that this meeting will be more successful than, of course, their gathering back in March. Now, gold prices holding steady today as well, as the current uncertainty continues to weigh on risk sentiment, which, of course, has been positive for gold in the longer term. Well, let's head into a quick break now, still coming up on the show. Informal traders fear being left behind as Nigeria distributes economic relief funds.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Now, if the coronavirus doesn't kill us, the trade restrictions will. That's according to a horticulturist in Cote d'Ivoire whose exotic heliconias are now rotting after international flights were suspended. And of course, his luxury exports to Europe came to an abrupt halt. Here's CGTN's Alexandria Majala with more on his story.
Ivorian horticulturalist Drissa Yeo is a smallholder farmer. He grows red heliconias and other exotic flowers on 2 hectares of land in Azague, 30 kilometers outside of the commercial capital, Abidjan. The crop is mainly for export to Belgium and the Netherlands. However, Africa's informal sector has been badly hit by the confinement measures. The continent has had to suspend flights and also saw a massive reduction in trade as governments imposed restrictions to stop the spread of the novel coronavirus.
Since the start of the month, there have been no more flights with our business partners. It's global, and our partners asked us to stop sending flowers for export. And then Cote d'Ivoire as well stopped the flights and the transit companies.
Yeo switched from a banana crop 10 years ago to the more lucrative tropical flower trade, which earns him an average of $2,500 per week, exporting to Europe by air freight twice a week. Since all international flights were suspended on March 21st, Yeo's income has dried up, much like his flowers with no market.
To the father of the nation and to the Prime Minister, think of us. Otherwise, it won't be the virus that kills us, but it will be another virus, which is the loss of trade, that is going to kill us. All the people we feed will get hit by a far more dangerous virus.
The farmers have to keep working to make sure they don't lose the crop altogether, as they can't allow the flower to mature and die naturally, otherwise they will not grow back.
Even this one, we have to cut it today. We were due to cut it next week because it would open and would be ready, but we don't know when the suspension of flights will be lifted. So this one will be spoiled, and so now we have to cut it out.
EO says they were told by the transit companies they use that the suspension of the flights would go on until May. With the loss of tourism as well, even big hotels in Abidjan won't buy his flowers, which he grows as part of a cooperative of small farmers who each find their own clients to trade with. The AU found that African governments could lose up to 20 to 30% of their fiscal revenue, estimated at 500 billion in 2019. Exports and imports are projected to drop at least 35% from 2019 levels, incurring a loss in the value of trade of around $270 billion. This at a time when the fight against the virus spread will lead to an increase in public spending of at least $130 billion. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Now, the International Monetary Fund had said that social distancing was not realistic for the most vulnerable, and the notion of working from home was only possible for the few. Those that work in the informal sector, which accounts for more than 85% of employment in Africa, are largely affected by this. And while most African governments have rolled out economic safety nets to cushion them from, of course, the coronavirus outbreak's effects, most of these workers in the informal sector still stand to lose out. Here's CGTN's Terry Wangari with more.
Kemi Adepoju is a dressmaker and works in the informal sector. Glamorous party scenes are a must in Nigeria, often keeping tailors like Adepoju busy. But lockdowns, initially slated to last 14 days, began in Lagos and the capital Abuja on March the 30th. This meant no one was organizing parties, which in turn has affected Adepoju's business.
The government should help us to end this so that people can have their parties. It's only when people organize parties that we can get money to eat. We have nothing to sell. We are tailors. Government should help us.
The Nigerian government announced a repayment moratorium for government loans made to small businesses ranging from market traders to farmers. It also began making cash transfers to the country's poorest households. But many hawkers and other informal traders don't have bank or mobile money accounts where those relief transfers can be made even if they were eligible.
If the lockdown should take longer than it's supposed to, people won't have money to purchase food again. So everything they'll be taking will be on credit, and it will affect us a lot. So my prayer is that the coronavirus, like the COVID-19, should just come to an end before the 2 weeks break that has been given to everybody, so that everybody will go back to their normal life and work as they used to.
Meanwhile, Adepoju still continues to sew the fabrics already received, with hope that the lockdown will end and lives will return to normal.
This lockdown was so sudden. If I saw it coming, I would not have used all the money to buy fabric. I would have kept the money and used it to buy food now.
The coronavirus crisis has piled more pressure on the Nigerian government's finances at a time when it was already struggling with a slump in the price of oil, the mainstay of the economy. It is hoped that this pandemic will end sooner rather than later for the sake of many informal businesses like Adepoju's. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
Well, before we go, let's check in on Africa's currencies today. South Africa's rand a little firmer, with the improved risk sentiment prevalent in markets on Tuesday beginning to fade. It did gain as much as 3% at one stage. Now, this optimism was short-lived, however, as the lockdown in most countries seem likely to be extended. Meanwhile, Kenya's shilling was weaker due to lack of dollar inflows and thin trading activity. That's amid slowing economic activity due to the effects, of course, of the epidemic. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and of course the rest of the team, thanks for watching.